Hi there everybody, I'm Amanda Gordon with the Facial RX here in Spring, Texas. I wanted to do just a quick little introduction to this series of Dermalogica Institute videos. These are not my videos. I did not film these. They come directly from the CEO and instructor of Dermalogica Institute. These videos probably are more than 20 years old, but they do give some great examples of old school techniques as well as techniques that we still use today. I do apologize for the blurriness and graininess on some of these videos. There's not much I can do about that, but these are excellent teaching videos that I just wanted to make sure that are able to be shared and that you have the information in order to properly implement some of these techniques. All right, let's take a look.
One of the key techniques in treating oily and congested skin is galvanic disincrustation. What galvanic disincrustation allows us to do is electrically dilate the follicles and soften the sebum inside the follicles to make it much, much easier to extract. I use galvanic disincrustation on any skin that I'm going to do extractions on, unless of course they're contraindicated. You may choose to use galvanic disincrustation over the entire face if you have a very oily and congested skin, or just in areas where there might be areas of extraction like the nose, the chin or the forehead. Before we use the galvanic current, I'd like to discuss though what it is and how it works. Galvanic current is a direct electrical current, and it works with an active and a passive electrode. The active electrode is the electrode that we hold as skin therapists, and the passive electrode is the electrode that is attached to the client's body. And normally at the International Dermal Institute we work with a flat pad electrode that we just slide underneath the shoulder to make contact with the client. In some machines you'll see it attaches to the wrist, or sometimes the client holds it in their hand. Let's talk a little bit about the theory behind galvanic current. Galvanic current uses a direct current in either a positive or a negative application. Now, if the current is a negative application, the active electrode that we're holding emits a negative electrical charge. What that does is causes an alkaline reaction on the skin, which dilates the follicles, softens the tissue, and increases blood supply. What happens with the negative electrode is hydrogen is released from the active electrode that we're working with, and as the hydrogen is released, it reacts with sodium in the skin or in the solution we're working with. The sodium with the hydrogen converts to sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide then reacts with the oil or sebaceous matter in the skin, sebum, and sodium hydroxide and oil form a soaping solution. In fact, animal fat and sodium hydroxide are the most basic elements of an old-fashioned soap remedy. By causing a soaping activity on the sebum, it actually softens it, so that even the hardest, most firmest comedone can be easily extracted. There's really no other way we can achieve this with manual work. We have to use galvanic current. On the positive polarity, we then have an acidic reaction on the skin. An acidic reaction on the skin causes the skin to constrict. It firms the tissues, it reduces blood supply, and it constricts the follicles. So it's completely the opposite application to disincrustation. When we use the electrode on the positive polarity, oxygen is released from the active electrode and a small amount of hydrochloric acid is released on the negative, or sorry, the passive electrode on the client, which is then the negative. When we're using this on the positive polarity, the active, the electrode attached to the client becomes the negative polarity. And when we're using this on the negative polarity, the electrode becomes the positive on the client. So it's an opposites attract situation with galvanic current. So the first thing we're going to do is here's the electrode for the client, the passive electrode. We're going to slide it inside the sponge cover, make sure it's completely covered, and make sure that everything is wet, moist, because we want good contact with the skin. This prevents the electrical current jumping on the skin. In other words, if it's too dry, there's not a good conductivity of electricity. And it also absorbs any hydrochloric acid produced on this electrode when we're doing disincrustation. So I'm just going to sit our client up for a minute just to slide this underneath the shoulder and fall back. Now the client's full weight is on the electrode, so we know there's good contact with the skin. And in fact, you can have that pre-prepared before the client even gets into the couch. So I'm taking my cotton and I'm going to wet it with a disincrustation solution. So taking my tweezer, and you'll see there's a ring pincer at the bottom that allows us to close that tweezer around the cotton. So with it open, I'm just going to slide the cotton between the pincer and begin to wrap. And you must make sure that every metallic edge of the electrode is wrapped. Then I'm sliding up the ring to close the pincer inside the cotton. Now when we're doing full face extractions, let's not forget that the ears are a part of the face. At least at the International Dermal Institute they are. And many clients develop comedones inside the ear area. What we teach at the International Dermal Institute is when we're going to do extractions, we take 2 pieces of cotton, we soak them in warm disincrustation solution, squeeze them out so they're not too wet, and then, with the client's permission, we tuck those cotton pads into the ear. And what that does is it pre-softens any comedones in the ear area, ready for us to extract. So I'm just tucking that into the ear, and it will stay there while I do disincrustation on the face area, and then it will have already been in the ears for a couple of minutes, ready for extractions when we get to that point. So now we're ready to do disincrustation on the face. I take a little bit more of my disincrustation solution. I'm just going to foam it up. Now you may be working with a very simple disincrustation solution of baking soda and distilled water. It's pretty basic and it can cause a lot of irritation on the skin. So I would recommend you rather work with a commercially prepared disincrustation solution. This one foams up, which I really like because it stays still on the skin, doesn't drip. And now I'm actually going to be doing disincrustation just in the areas that I might be expecting to extract. If you've got a very oily skin, overall oiliness, you can certainly apply disincrustation solution and do galvanic disincrustation in the whole facial area. But just applying the disincrustation solution with the fan brush. Remember, we wetted our cotton with the disincrustation solution already. I'm just making absolutely sure it's nice and wet. Galvanic current is a direct current, so we're going to begin by placing the electrode on the skin, then increasing the current of the galvanic. Don't increase the current and then put the current on the skin, because what happens with galvanic current, if there's an interruption in the current between the electrode and the skin, you can get a muscle contraction. And in fact, galvanic current can be used in that method for muscle contraction. We don't use that application as skin therapists. We're using galvanic current for disincrustation and iontophoresis. So I'm placing the electrode on the skin, and I would have told the client to expect a warming, because remember, negative polarity increases blood flow, a warming and a tingling on the skin. What's also common is for the client to taste a metallic taste in the mouth, and I would have educated my client on that already. It has nothing to do with fillings or braces in the mouth. It has to do with the pH of the saliva changes. And when the pH of the saliva changes, it tastes slightly coppery or metallic in the mouth. So as I place the electrode on the skin, I'm then going to turn up the rheostat of the galvanic current, keeping it moving all the time, and I'm watching the rheostat, which shows me skin resistance to the current. Now, what the rheostat does not show, it does not show how high the current is. It shows the skin resistancy. So you have to keep watching the rheostat, and if it suddenly jumps up, turn down the amount of current, and if it suddenly turns low, goes down, increase the amount of current. That shows you, the gauge shows you the amount of resistancy to the skin. When you work over bony areas as opposed to soft tissue areas, it will change. How does that feel? Perfect. Okay, so now I'm using my tweezer electrode and I'm watching my rheostat. We've got it on the negative polarity. We're going over the nose area, Remember, the negative polarity softens the sebum in the follicles, makes it much easier to extract. Keep it moving all the time. Keep it moving all the time. If you break contact with the skin by mistake, don't just put the electrode back on the skin. Go back, turn it down, then place the electrode on the skin, then turn the rheostat back up. Avoid any areas of small cuts or nicks. If you see any shaving nicks, avoid those areas. Any open lesions, because you will see if you go over an open area, the rheostat will jump up and the skin is broken, and it's a contraindication to disincrustation or any electrical current. Coming up, I'm going to come between the eyebrows, over the forehead. I'm using the flat part of the tweezer, but I can also tip it on its end for a more concentrated disincrustation, watching my rheostat. And it should take about 3 to 4 minutes, not less than 2 minutes. You're not going to get a result, and never more than 10 minutes in total for galvanic current. So we recommend 3 to 4 minutes. And after 3 to 4 minutes, we're going to leave the disincrustation solution on the skin and perform manual extractions.